So, in a world dominated by superpowers like the US and China, let's talk about Great Britain. Where does it really fit in? We tend to think of the British Empire as, a thing of the past, history. But what if it never truly went away? What if it just changed its uniform?
It's a pretty provocative idea, right? Some theories out there suggest that there's a hidden British Empire, a sort of clandestine network that's still pulling the strings of global politics. And that's exactly the rabbit hole we're going down in this explainer.
So this really leaves us with two totally different ways of looking at modern Britain. Is it a historical relic? A respected but kind of fading power that's living in the shadow of its own past? Or is it a hidden global power, a really shrewd operator whose influence you don't see but is absolutely massive? Let's find out.
All right, let's get right into it. We're going to start with the most explosive theory out there, the one that claims the empire never really ended. It just went undercover.
You'll see this idea pushed really hard by groups like Promethean Action. The argument is that a modern British imperial system is secretly manipulating world events, and that these so-called remnants of empire are the real enemy in today's geopolitical battles.
So, what does this secret control theory actually say? I mean, it's not just some vague accusation. It points to very specific pillars of global power that, it argues, are fundamentally British by design. Let's break them down.
Okay, so according to this theory, the control works through four key areas. First up, you've got finance, through big players like the Fed and the City of London. Second, international bodies, like the World Economic Forum. Third, you have security alliances, think NATO. And finally, it works through influential figures and think tanks who are seen as the modern face of this old imperial order.
And here's the real kicker. This theory isn't just about history. It reframes things happening right now, from debates about the Federal Reserve to arguments over NATO's role as part of one big, ongoing struggle, a hidden war between independent nations and this transnational imperial system.
Okay, those are some really bold claims. So let's do our homework. How do these accusations of secret control actually stack up when we check them against the public record? Let's start with a really specific one about Venezuela. The theory goes that Hugo Chavez was secretly groomed by British intelligence, which would make his government, and Maduro's after him, just a pawn in London's game. But is there any hard evidence for that?
And this is where the theory kind of hits a wall. The public record, and this includes declassified British documents, it tells a completely different story. So the claim is that MI6 cultivated Chavez. But look, when he was actually thrown out in a coup in 2002, he asked the British for help, and they said no. The record actually shows pretty tense relations, with only very limited cooperation on specific things, like fighting drug trafficking. That looks a lot more like friction than secret control.
Now let's pivot to another key region, and another huge claim, that there's a secret imperial command structure that's actually directing the government of Israel. The theory here is that Israel is basically a British proxy, with its policies being guided from London.
But again, the documented history is just way more complicated. The relationship didn't start with a secret deal. It started with violent conflict during the British Mandate. Yeah, today MI6 and Mossad share intel on mutual threats like Iran. But you also see these major points of friction, like the huge diplomatic crisis in 2010 when Mossad used fake UK passports. That's a relationship between two sovereign nations, not a puppet and its master.
So, if the evidence doesn't really back up a grand conspiracy theory, does that mean British influence is just a myth? Not at all. It just suggests that maybe we've been looking for the wrong kind of power. Instead of secret agents, maybe we should be looking at systems and structures. And this timeline shows that evolution perfectly. British power didn't just vanish, it transformed. It went from direct military control, think the East India Company or the gunboats of the Opium Wars, to something way more subtle. After the formal empire fell apart, the City of London became this global financial giant. And today, its influence is multiplied through a whole network of offshore centers that quietly shape how money moves around the globe.
To really get the scale of this, just look at foreign exchange. Every day, trillions of dollars are traded, and London's financial district, the City of London, handles over 40% of that. That's not just a big number, that's a staggering concentration of financial power. It gives the UK enormous leverage over the entire world economy.
And this brings us to the real key concept here. Structural influence. Forget about secret orders from a smoke-filled room. This is about the power to shape the rules of the game, the legal, financial, and security systems the whole world runs on. And that gives Britain outsized leverage long after the imperial flags came down. This structural influence really rests on three core pillars, and they're all direct legacies of the empire. First, you have finance, all centered on the City of London. Second is law, because English common law is still the foundation for so much international business. And third, intelligence, thanks to Britain's key role in the powerful Five Eyes alliance.
So it is absolutely critical that we make a distinction between these two ideas, because influence is not the same thing as direct control, and understanding that difference is really the key to seeing how power works in the 21st century.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have the theory of direct control. It's centralized, top-down, and needs secret plots to work. On the other side, you have the evidence for structural influence, a power that's spread out, it's systemic, and it operates right out in the open through the legal and financial systems we all use. It's not about one hidden hand. It's about the design of the entire system.
And we can't forget about soft power. See this number? 56? That's how many member states are in the Commonwealth of Nations today. It's a voluntary group, born from the old empire, that gives Britain this ready-made network for diplomacy, culture, and trade all across the globe.
Experts have a great name for this. They call it sticky power. It's a type of influence that lasts because it doesn't need constant force. The global systems for commerce and law were largely built on British models. And frankly, it's just easier for the world to keep using that existing architecture than it is to tear it all down and build something new.
And all this leaves us with a final, really fascinating question. If it's not a secret group with total control, but instead an outsized, lasting leverage that's built right into the system itself, what's the real difference? In our super interconnected world, where exactly does influence end and control begin? Now that's a question that redefines what it even means to be a global power today.